Northeast Neighborhood Housing Strategies Oversight Committee. I'm going to ask those who are a part of the Oversight Committee and or will be sitting at the table, please come and join me. For those who are already in Zoom, hello, hello, hello. We welcome you into the space tonight. Thank you for being a part of the discussion. We've got a lot to cover and much to address. Trust that everyone has the agenda for the Oversight Committee. One of my traditional kind of openings has been that we ask individuals who sign up to engage and testify to make sure that their comments are in relationship to the agenda of the night. Let me explain two reasons for that. One, we want to make sure that opportunities for individuals to ask questions, to engage, to share perspective, to weigh in about the items that are being addressed. We want to make sure to give space for that. So that's been a traditional reason for offering or putting it in that framing. The second reason is the people who are in the space are prepared to address agenda items or should be prepared to address agenda items. And so I want to make sure that community members who have concerns and heartbeat and passion for the work that's being done have the opportunity to engage with the people who should be prepared to address it. It is not to limit. It is not to exclude. It is not to say that we don't want to hear what you're concerned about outside of the agenda, because we do. So again, for those who have signed up or will sign up for engagement tonight, please, if you could make sure to address the agenda items. But if there are other things that are of concern that specifically the Oversight Committee should be aware of, we want to know about it. And we'd love for you to raise it. So as we get ready to go, we've also done this. I ask everyone, and I don't know if we can capture it because we are kind of hybrid, but I normally ask those who are members of the Portland Housing Bureau to raise their hands so people in the room can know who they are. So, and I don't know if we can capture that on the screen or not, but that's okay. So we have some staff here to capture as well. The agenda for tonight, we are going to have an update from our interim director and then the NHP update, and I will let them explain NHP. Update will happen, and then we will talk about some preference policy updates. We will talk about an exciting development at 5020 North Interstate. We'll hear from SEI and CDP. I see my friend, the director of SEI, Mr. Hobson. Good to see you, sir. So we will hear from them. And then we're going to hear something that I think is many of us are wanting to lean in on, and that's the PSU preference policy evaluation. There are several of us who are concerned about the information and the memo, and so we're looking forward to some real conversation around that. And hopefully we'll have some executive directors join us as well. And then we will talk about a notice of funding availability. There'll be space for public comment, and we'll wrap up. In light of that, thank you. Welcome into the meeting tonight, and we will go directly to our interim director's update. Hi, Molly.
Thank you, Dr. Holt. As you may have noticed, there's been a few changes at the Portland Housing Bureau very recently. Director Callahan departed us right in the middle of July, so we have been shifting gears a little bit. Soon after that, Commissioner Ryan has asked me to be the interim director. I was previously the deputy director of Portland Housing Bureau for about the last 3.5 years. I must say I'm very humbled and honored to serve in this role. I have a lot to learn, especially and want to serve in my best capacity as I can, but just wanted to ask everyone for patience and understanding as we get through this interim period, because we do not know for how long it will be. We know that there is a national search that the Commissioner's Office will conduct, but before they do a national search, they will start with some engagement with the community to help understand what are some of the values and qualifications that the community wants to see in the next permanent director. Leslie Goodlow, our Business and Equity Manager, is our liaison with the Commissioner's Office related to the recruitment and the relationship with the consultant, Sherry Dunn. And we are combining some additional assessment work with components of her engagement to help also influence the beginnings of a strategic plan for PHB. It's hard to do a strategic plan without a permanent director, so we're laying the groundwork, if you will, and really understanding the values and the needs of the community that could serve for both the strategic plan and for a permanent director. So we are proposing to the Commissioner's Office that Sherry come and have focus group with our advisory committees, including this one, and then do some deeper engagement with the stakeholders that we work with day in and day out. So it's a very important role. Just wanted to also mention that Matthew Schabold has agreed to serve as interim deputy director during this time. He has been with the Bureau for over 8 years, serving in the policy and planning manager. So it's very excited. He's unfortunately had an engagement tonight and was unable to make it. Leslie Goodlow has been very gracious as also to increase her responsibility and capacity and has taken over the neighborhood preservation program. That's where we generally serve with our homeownership programs. And also is now overseeing our equity manager and is doing all the additional work related to the recruitment. Thank you, Leslie, and thank you, Matthew, for your additional capacity and energy and all your institutional knowledge. I've been very, very grateful for you too for these last very several weeks. A few things that have been going on additionally in the last month is we have put together a state legislative package that we work with our governmental affairs folks when we start gearing up for the next legislative session. There are a number of measures that we're hoping that gets brought forward as part of a state package related to addressing the homeownership gap, reforming what we call private activity bonds. It's a major financing source of affordable housing. We want to extend the HOLTE sunset. That's one of our development incentives programs. We want to continue working on tenant protections and affordable housing preservation. Additionally, we also submitted a fall bump, which is a budget monitoring package, thank you, into our central budgeting office and city council, and we're requesting a couple additional limited term positions from our general funds, recognizing the need for some additional capacity in both our administrative team to help with HR and all the challenges of recruiting in the middle of COVID, as well as a program coordinator to help with our incentive programs, since every time there's a code change that comes in the city, we have to adopt those, but we haven't necessarily have been able to bring in the revenue to do that kind of work. And we're also requesting an FTE, a program specialist, to help with our rental services office, help with the hotline. And I am very excited to hear about our solicitation that you'll hear more about our solicitation we're putting out and how we're going to advance, how we're advancing North and Northeast housing strategy in addition to the maximizing indebtedness goals that we set out with City Council a few years ago. And also very much looking forward to hearing ways we need to improve all the work we do with the study that PSU did.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that. We will move forward to our next agenda item, NHP updates. I'll let you introduce yourselves, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Make sure you push the button from red to green.
Thank you. Good evening, committee, Dr. Holt and committee members. Good to see you, Jillian. It's an honor to be here and really meet some of the committee members face to face. This is my first meeting face to face, so it's been an honor. My name is John Chen. I am the new Neighborhood Housing Preservation Manager. with the Portland Housing Bureau. I'm here to talk about some of the outcomes that we have seen around home ownership and preservation. I'm here with my colleague, Ira Bailey, and he will be going through some of those data points. And the last thing we're going to do is also seeking a support in the recommendation that I'd like to ask the leadership team over at the Portland Housing Bureau around the preference policy and some of the work we're doing there. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Ira.
Good evening, committee members, Dr. Holt. Thank you, senators. I had nothing to do with January 6th. I just want you to know that. It is great to see you all in person again. I'm super excited that we're here. 2 years is a long time. My name's Ira Bailey. I have presented here a couple times. But again, I'm really grateful to be here in person and to see you all. So I'm going to provide a couple of updates, one for the homeownership asset preservation, and then one for the preference policy homeownership update. Hopefully the lights will stop winking at me. For the homeownership asset preservation, if you all have received the slides, next slide, please. Oh, we were clicking ourselves, okay. Oop. There we are. Okay, so you'll notice that this is only recording things from January 1st through June 30th of 2022. The reason why it is only this subsection is because at the end of December 2021, we converted the program from a pilot program to a regularly funded program moving forward. So I'm super excited to say that we are still moving on with the Home Ownership Asset Preservation Pilot Program, which is a program that provides legal services to low-income families within the city of Portland. Now, we've actually even extended beyond the North-Northeast study area and it's free legal services to do things like wills, trusts, help with estates, so that the wealth created in one generation can be passed on to the next generation without legal issues. Between January 1st and June 30th, and this is a pilot program that is actually being coordinated through African American Alliance for Home Ownership and their partnership with the Common Law Center. They have provided 5 estate planning webinars because everything was online. 40 households attended those webinars. 10 families enrolled in those programs, and of those 10, 5 families have actually received legal services to help retain the wealth and their estates and trusts. I will tell you as well, is looking forward to having hybrid and in-person meetings for these as well. So they're moving forward. We'll be doing that. Thank you. Next slide. So as you can see, this is a breakdown of the MFIs for the households as well as the demographic data. So roughly 4 of those 4 families were between 0 and 30 MFI, 4 were between 31 and 50% MFI, and 2 were between 51 and 80%. So all of these families have...
I hate to interrupt you, but when we're using acronyms, if you could just explain what they mean.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
MFI stands for median family income. Sometimes it is used interchangeably with AMI, which you may see on some charts, which is area median income. And what that is a calculation between the income of a household and that household's size. So for example, HUD represents that number by looking at a household of 4, saying this is the average income of a household of 4 in this particular area. That number then gets broken down by a household of 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. So, and then with the race and ethnicity, as you can see, most of the families are Black families. There is one Native American family that was there as well. Most recipients are also female heads of households. So that is not to say that they are single heads of households. It is just households that recognize the female as the head. Next slide. So before I move on to the preference policy, any questions about the home ownership asset preservation program?
Oversight Committee members, any questions? I see none. Do we have any Oversight Committee members that are hybrid, that are in via?
No, Kimberly's not a member. Is Felicia on? Felicia Tripp? 'Cause I thought she was gonna join by Zoom.
We don't see. So I want to make sure that I give opportunity to all the Oversight Committee members to engage. Okay, thank you. So no questions at the moment.
Thank you. So, preference policy home ownership update. I want to start with the preference policy home ownership goal. Our goal is to achieve 110 homeowners by the end of 2022. We are currently at 105 right now, so 5 short of the goal with essentially 3.5 months to go. I would also like to let you know that there are 4 families that are currently set to purchase homes at the Kenton Commons development before the end of the year. So that will take us to 109.
That is worth celebrating. That's pretty significant. Good work. It's great.
In addition to that, I'm trying to see if I go to that later. I do not. So that will leave us with essentially 9 homes. And then John will talk about this during the ask. But there are 9 homes that are unassigned at this time. We have reached out to additional families. So there are 20 additional families that we've found that are showing interest in the 9 units. So I do not doubt that we will hit the 110 before December 31st, 2022. I'm pretty excited about that. And as you can see, this slide here just shows the, oh, looks like there was a question.
Yeah, could you talk about the 14 folks, the non-subsidy folks?
Sure. So there are families that we refer, that signed up for the preference policy, who we then referred to Portland Housing Center or other organizations. And 14 of those families have been identified as being able to purchase a home or acquire a home without funds that were dedicated specifically to the preference policy. For example, 3 families were able to purchase in Habitat for Humanity's Cully Commons development. A couple of families inherited homes. A couple of families were able to just purchase outside of the Portland area using either PHC's MAP program or other down payment assistance funding. So we still want to capture the success of those families because they did receive some sort of counseling. They did receive education, which is things that we're supporting through the preference policy, not just down payment assistance. So, you're welcome.
I have a question. These are their 9 units. Those were units that where the developer received subsidy, and then that subsidy would be kind of passed through to the home buyer. Are they all in the same place? Can you tell me where those 9 units are?
Sure.
And sorry, and I'd also be curious the size of the units, 1, 2, 3 bedroom. If you know, you may not know that off the top of your head. It's a specific question.
But I can't. So I know a couple of those things. So the Kenton Commons development was overall is a 30-unit development. It was built in 2 phases. The first phase was 12 units. I believe it was a 6 and 6 mix of 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms. And then the second phase is 18 units of 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms. And so the 9 units are 1 unit is still remaining in the Kenton Commons Phase 1 development, and then 8 units are unassigned in Kenton Commons Phase 2. This development is on the corner of Kilpatrick and North Interstate. So you're welcome. I couldn't tell you how many 2 bedrooms or 3s. Unfortunately, I don't know that. But and both of these homes, yes, they were funded during the development and construction phase by dedicated dollars, which means and which allows families to purchase them at a much lower than market rate purchase price. Habitat, it's a partnership between Habitat and Proud Ground. Habitat's subsidy also includes, for those families who need it, an additional loan that helps bring the monthly payment for that unit down to 30% of that homeowner's income. So,
Are those units attached to something, a bigger complex, or are they standalone units? What are,
They are condos. So the first development was essentially, it's kind of a bridgeway or walkway between the units, but it's one solid building with 12 units. The other is a solid building with 18 units. And I believe it's the second building is 3 floors. So
Just to, if you could elaborate, Ira, are we talking about condos that are like more of the flats or more the vertical style?
oh yeah, they're kind of both. So they're not like like row houses. So they're not built like that. They're not the townhouse style. There is an upstairs and a downstairs level. So there's 6 on the ground floor, for example, in the first development, and then there's 6 on the second floor, individual units. So the people are stacked on top of each other with stairs.
what are they, about 1,300 square feet or something?
That I could not tell you off the top of my head. I don't think they're that big though. I think they're closer to like 1,000, somewhere around there.
Okay.
So, any other questions about those buildings? I'm super excited. I usually don't get those questions. So this chart also just kind of shows a breakdown of the assistance that we've been able to provide. So what you see as Northeast, those are DPAL dollars, or down payment assistance loans that we provide. For those who may not know what a down payment assistance loan is, it is a second mortgage, a silent second mortgage, which means there's no payments required on the front end for those units that are forgiven. And this loan is, these loans are up to $100,000 to help cover down payment, and also bring down the principal if needed. That is forgiven after 30 years. So the way the breakdown works is if a person stays in that home for 15 years, 50% of that money goes away. They don't have to pay it back. And then about 3% gets forgiven every year after that up to year 30, which the entire balance is then removed. No tax penalties as well. So just want to be clear on that. Yes.
I just want to, because I think we have some new members, and I think I just heard you saying it, that the down payment, the forgiveness portion was a result of the work of this committee, and so it's pretty great.
Yes.
And I'm really excited that's
Phenomenal.
that many
Yeah,
homeowners out
I
there.
agree.
Thank you. Yes.
So you say in 30 years it all goes away?
Correct. Starting
Wow.
at year 15. So
Okay.
if they sell the home, which some families have done prior to year 15, then the money is due to be repaid. Or if there's a cash out refinance. So if the home accrues like $800,000 in equity in 2 years and they want to pull that money out, I was like, well, can you pay back the assistance?
Yeah.
So I do have a question. Given the increasing interest rates, given there's a silent second mortgage, if one of the homeowners were to want to refinance their home to get into a lower interest rate at some point in the future, would they be eligible for that?
There is a process that would allow that to happen, and some families have taken advantage of that. Yes. And it does not trigger a repayment. Just want to be clear on that. So just kind of want to touch on this real quick, just so everyone's aware. Those piles or those columns represent funding sources. So Northeast is PHB funded dollars to be able to purchase within the Interstate Corridor Urban Renewal Area, affectionately known as ICURA. We did receive $1.6 million, which turned into 16 down payment assistance loans from Prosper Portland, which was great because Prosper Portland's allowable income limits were higher than ours. So we were able to help some families who were a little bit higher income. We did allow 2 families to purchase in Lentz Town Center area. We had 20 overall citywide down payment assistance funds that were not restricted by some of the guidelines that our other dollars might have. And those are what's called STR, or short-term rental fees, that we received, or CET, which is construction excise tax dollars that we received. And then what you see as Olin Project, Kenton Commons Phase 1, Kenton Commons Phase 2, those are the new construction developments that were built and sold in partnership with Proud Ground and Habitat for Humanity. Next slide.
Give me before you go on, those, what is the CRT dollars?
CET.
CET.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit how they work.
How we receive them?
Yeah, how you work those monies.
I would love to tell you that, but how it works is a little bit above my pay grade.
Gotcha.
So, CET, construction excise tax, we get a percentage, I think is it 1%? I think it's 1%, for on construction projects that are above a certain dollar threshold. And so that money comes into the city, and then the city gives us a portion of it to use for affordable housing. And so we use it as citywide we've used it for development projects, and we've also used it for down payment assistance. The other thing I wanted to mention was that the Northeast, the Prosper Portland, Lentz, Tiff, Olin, Kenton 1, and Kenton 2, that's all tax increment financing out of the interstate URA. So those are all dollars that come out of the ICURA. The CET and the straw are citywide dollars.
Thank you. So were there any other questions? No? All right. All right, next slide, please. All right. So as you may be aware, the preference policy was a way to prioritize families that were displaced due to city action. And most of those families that were displaced due to city action years ago were Black families. And these graphs here show the demographic data, our makeup of those families that have received the assistance that we've provided. And as you can see, 86% of the families that received assistance were Black families. So those families who were affected were those families who were helped. And then as you can see for AMIs, most families that were assisted were those under or between 61 and 80% AMI. And as I mentioned before, that stands for Area Median Income, which is sometimes used interchangeably with MFI. So are any questions on, so this shows like who we're helping, what their incomes are, and why they need help. So. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ira. Next slide, please. All right. Ira gave a lot of history, or a lot of points regarding in terms of the Kenton Commons development, also the preference policy and the reason why behind that. The preference list that we have for in terms of home ownership was developed back in 2016 when the development of Olin, Kenton Common 1 and 2, formerly known as Gilpatrick 1 and 2, and also DPA, which is down payment assistance loan. The list got updated again in 2019 for the project 5020, which is going to be discussed tonight, and also for the Kenton and Olin development. So now we're here in 2022, and I already mentioned that we have about 9 units for the Kenton Common Development 1 and 2, phase 1 and 2, that is still available to be purchased. Of that list, we have about 300 individuals on those lists. And so we are reaching out to those 300 individuals to see if they're interested in purchasing those units. Next slide, please. So for phase 1 and 2, again, I mentioned that there's 9 units. 1 unit is in phase 1, and 8 units are in phase 2. And again, those units are dedicated for folks on the preference list. And those units are developed by Habitat in partnership with Proud Grounds. Some of the challenges that we've seen over this past development was, of course, COVID, right? COVID had a lot of challenges for a lot of different programs and a lot of different things, events around the United States or around the world even. So that kind of helped delay some of the process, trying to get folks in terms of buying, purchasing homes, challenges in work-wise and whatnot like that. Other challenges we've seen in terms of in hindsight, as we look at in terms of the development and talking to the folks on the preference list, is that there are a preference of type of home that people like to own. People like to own single family instead of the condo or the type of development that the Kenton Common 1 and 2 has. And so some of the folks that were offered this unit decided to pass. So right now we have a carrying cost to develop associated with those development for the Kenton Commons development, and the carrying cost budget was roughly about $300,000, and we're about we're about the end of that budget amount, so we need to figure out in terms of what to do next. And so it was about 10,000 per unit and for 6 months, and the final development of that project was finalized back in late winter, early spring of this year, 2022. And with those vacant units right now, there's concern of vandalism, squatting, whatnot like that. And so we really need to figure out what to do to get those units sold. Once the units are sold, then we could go ahead and turn the HOA, which is the homeowner association, over to the residents, or to the homeowners, I should say. And so those are some of the stuff that we would like to move forward as soon as possible so that we could get folks, the owners, part of this, to manage the homeowner association rather than someone else. Next slide, please. So what we did in terms of our plan this summer, as we looked at those units and the preference lists, is that we decided to put out a letter to everyone on the preference list. So 300 folks on the list received a letter back in roughly the middle of August 19th, letting them know that these units are available. And as you know, interest rates are going up, prices are going down, but with interest rate going up, there's also a challenge of trying to make sure that you're able to pay your mortgages, right? Because the cost of that is going to increase with higher interest. So our plan is to send out the letter, and like Iris indicated, we have it's not a high number of responses, but a pretty good response, right? So we have about 19 folks who responded that they're interested in those units. And we asked that they either contact IRA or the Portland Housing Bureau, and then we will go ahead and send those names over to Habitat to do the assessment. So Habitat and program will be reviewing those individuals who are interested in purchasing those home, and they will give us a response back by November 4th to see if those individuals are moving forward with home ownership. IRA indicated that I believe about 4 or 5 individuals are scheduled to purchase those units. And so right now, we're hoping that we have 5 more.
It's 4 beyond it's 4 without the 9.
4 without the 9, okay, got it. 4 without the 9, so we're hoping in terms of between the responses they receive and also working with Portland Housing Center, they have about 3 or 4 individuals that they have within their network who are interested in purchasing those units. Leslie.
I'm sorry, John and Ira. Can you guys had a little exchange there, and I'm a little confused. So is it 4 plus 9?
So the 4 that I mentioned are not included in the 9. So it would be 9 after those 4 close.
So if those 4 don't close, then we've got possibly 13.
Correct.
Okay. I just
Correct.
wanted to make sure I was hearing
but
correctly.
they should close according to Habitat and Proud Ground. So there's a shared record keeping kind of device that we're using, and according to that, they have those 4 families committed to those units.
Thank you, Leslie.
Based on what I'm hearing you guys say, I'm not so sure if you're taking the easy way or just doing this to get it off the books, or are you really making an honest effort to find somebody within the list for these? And if there is some mitigating reasons why the people on the list are not accepting these these units, then have you vetted that thoroughly enough?
I can address that. So I first want to say nothing is really easy. Regardless of how we handle this, it's not going to be the most positive way. It's hard to say we're committing units for a specific program or specific community, and then that community not want those units, and then those units potentially go somewhere else. So there is that issue. But the challenge is, and if I can be honest, when the organizations that we partnered with, such as Portland Housing Center, NAIA, PCRI, and others that provide homebuyer education and homebuyer counseling, when a lot of organizations who provide assistance, when we talk about home ownership, when we do marketing for home ownership, you always have this single family home with a fence, right? Condos aren't a big thing. Attached units are not a big thing yet here in Portland. So a lot of the families want single family detached homes. A lot of families want to be able to take a chance to go out into the market, find their own home, and then develop and start their families there. Us doing outreach to these families this is actually the second time we've done it. So we did this back in 2020. We reached out to everyone so the way the preference policy works is families are given priority based on how many city actions affected them or the generations that they belong to. So the max number that you could get as far as preference points is 6, depending on, the addresses you put, or eminent domain. And so we went through the entire list of those families who qualified and verified their points. And so what was remaining is people that we allowed to apply for the preference policy because it wasn't limited to only those folks who are from Portland, or only those folks who could actually validate or verify their points. Anyone who was interested could apply. But we went through the entire list of validated points, and some of those families are actually still working with Portland Housing Center, still getting counseling on their budget, on income, on credit, just so that they can become mortgage ready and take the first opportunity that they desire to get, because we're not trying to force families into a specific type of housing either. And so we went through that list in 2020. And then we thought, you know what, these families don't want condos. And one of the other challenges is that the condos weren't built. So sometimes it's hard to sell a home that doesn't have a physical structure that you can visit, that you can walk through, that you can touch. But we did. We went through the list and said, hey, anybody who's interested in these, we'll pull you off the waiting list so you don't have to wait until your time comes up if you're willing to go into the condo. And from that list, we got like 3 or 4 families who decided to purchase at that time. But folks responded at the time, we don't want condos. We just don't want condos. And so the condos eventually got built. We ran into this challenge now where families are still like, we don't prefer condos, but with interest rates going up, prices are still really high. Even if the house itself was the same exact price, it's still going to cost you several $100s more to carry that purchase. So we're reaching back through the list because it's costing the Bureau money. It's costing concern of those families who actually already purchased and are living there, because there have been break-ins. It's not like we risk it. There's been damage to the units which have been repaired. There have been stolen appliances which have had to be replaced. So there's just this high risk of what are we going to do for not just the cost but the safety of these families if these units stay vacant. And so that's why we're reaching back through the preference policy list to say, hey, look, circumstances in the market have changed. Maybe your perspective of what you want has changed. And so we did. We sent that letter out to 300 families. I found out like a day ago that 100 of those letters were returned. I personally sent out emails to all of those families, and we got 20 people who responded, who said, you know what, we're interested, we'll take it, we want to take advantage of this. Portland Housing Center, I said, hey, you guys are the ones dealing with verified preference policy points. I'm letting you know we're doing this. So folks who have been on the fence and we're saying, well, no, we want to buy that house, that 4-bedroom or that $500,000 house when we can. The market, don't be on the fence, choose what you want to do. And so Portland Housing Center has made more referrals, about 3 or 4, as John said, to Proud Ground or Habitat for those units. And then people off the street, I found, are coming in and say, hey, we heard about the preference policy. I'm on the preference policy. Can I get on the list to see these units? So we're trying to reach it, but I also want to be clear, these condos are not the last of assistance that we're providing to families. So those families who are on the preference policy list who choose not to go to the condos, doesn't mean they won't get assistance. It just means that they won't get this opportunity. And then that would allow us, and I'll let John continue, but that'll allow us to take the next steps. Right. If that answers your question.
Yeah, it answered somewhat of it, but I'm still just a little bit concerned as to making sure that you guys go a little further and above and beyond, just to push it a little bit. Yeah.
To be honest with you, I'd be happy to speak with you after this to come up, share some ideas if you have them.
Yeah, I happen to know a little bit about our outreach and the preference policy, by the way. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So, in light of our time, if you could get to the ask.
Sure. So the ask I'm seeking from the Oversight Committee is a support to allow us to after November 4th, if the units are still available, to then release those units and allow Habitat/Proud Ground to utilize their network, folks that are not on the preference list.
I was asking Ms. Goodlaw how many members we have to make sure we had a quorum to respond. Any comment from the committee members first?
How many other situations that are similar to this, to where these assets have jumped the fence, had the opportunity to jump the fence or get outside the framework of the preference policy? Is there any other assets that we've had that has been challenged under this structure?
So, no home ownership units have gone from preference policy to non-preference policy. We do have some rental, in the regulatory agreements for the rental buildings, that if we don't have people on the preference policy list available to go to them, then they have the opportunity to request to open up those units to non-preference policy people. And so I know that at one point we were down to like very few folks on the list.
Right.
And then shortly after that, we opened the list up ongoing. And so I don't know that that's currently an issue, but I know that there are units available in quite a few, in all 6 of our buildings, with Renaissance having the most right now. But hopefully, with the rolling preference policy list, we're able to fill those units with folks off the preference policy.
Got you. Thank you.
Jillian?
Thank you. I have a lot of questions, and I know we are short on time, but just an observation that the units that have been the most difficult to turn, we keep talking about them as condos versus single-family homes, but there's another difference, and that difference is down payment assistance, which reduces over time and generates intergenerational wealth at a much higher rate than a land trust project does. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I think they both have a home in home ownership. Down the land trust model, stability is a big part of home ownership. Having control over how much your payment is a big part of home ownership. But when we are talking about families who have signed up for the preference policy, who are looking to get back what was taken, some of that is intergenerational wealth building. And so I think it makes sense, and I would recommend, as we do more home ownership in the future, reaching out to folks who did turn this down and ask, why? Is it the condo structure? Is it that you have to go upstairs and you're not very mobile? Is it that it's a land trust and you want to be able to earn the same return on your investment that everybody else is? So even with the land trust model, I noted in the slides that a very small percentage of home buyers were under 60% area median income. And so we are still looking at 60 to 120 as being kind of the homeowner block. And I think it's just worth doing, I was going to say regression analysis, but that's maybe too nerdy, an analysis of, which programs went the fastest. And to answer a little bit of John's question about have we done this before where we released homeownership units, we have not, but I do remember that PCRI asked us to. And we said, no, you have to use this. And so I also I just want to acknowledge that, and that this, that they are a Black-led organization that first asked this question and we said no. And I'm not saying that we should say no to this just because we've said no in the past, but I just want to put that out there that, there's some reconciling to do between how we're treating different organizations and how, those two organizations have very different viewpoints about homeownership as well.
Thank you, Jillian. Appreciate that. Gabrielle?
We have a lot of questions, but we have a short amount of time, and this is a lot to unpack because my mind goes to, of course, surveys and drilling down. As a homeowner myself, I wanted that picket fence and that single-family residence, but the reason I wanted it was in addition to generational wealth building, it was the ability to have multi-generational living. And so I wonder if one of the caveats for families is that if you only have a 2 or 3 bedroom, where are you going to put mom and dad when they need a place to live? How are you going to have your adult children and potentially their children? Because, culturally, a lot of families want that ability to have that multi-generational living. And so I'm curious if that's been something that's been looked at. And then just a broader question is, if we have this information about what individuals in the preference policy are seeking, then are there ways that we can accommodate more of that in future building so that we're not continuing to produce, bring to the market things that are not what people are wanting? And then the last thing I will say is that when we're also talking about the preference policy and looking at the housing that was lost, if these were single-family residences, and now the expectation is you're going to this very small condo, it's not the same thing. And so those were just kind of my questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Virgie. Any comment?
There we go. I find it very interesting, and I'm glad we're, at least from hearing Mr. Bailey say that you're not trying to force any buyer, regardless of what they want. You're giving them an opportunity to participate, and they do have a right to say yes or no. And I'm glad you're just not dropping them, but you're coming back to them and seeing if there's something else that would bring them into housing. So I do compliment the Housing Bureau and the efforts they're making, the fact that they go back twice already and try to get people interested, but they don't make the final decision. And I think that's the way it should be for a purchaser, and whatever their reasons may be.
Thank you very much. And for the ask and the response, at this point, I don't think putting it to vote makes sense. What I will say is, since we're talking about November 4th, we have another meeting in November. So it'd be great to find out what's happening, and we can have a conversation about and make a determination on what makes sense then. And there's an opportunity for some engagement between and with one of the Oversight Committee members who has indicated a willingness to have some conversation around strategy and ideas to create the best opportunity for what we do. I want to make sure that we are well informed about this specific thing. We've spent quite a bit of time to solidify units for families who've been impacted. And my preference, my very first default, my transparent position is I'm going to do everything possible to help the people who've been impacted, unapologetically. So before we release anything to anyone for anything, I want to make sure we've done everything we can. So that's my perspective, and I think it'll be good for us to revisit. What say you, Oversight Committee? You good with that? Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Holt. Thank you to committee members. This is, again, we appreciate your time. And I have to say, this quote, when I do a housing, this quote really resonated with me. We must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. And Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. quoted that, and so it resonated with me a lot in terms of working with the housing department. So
Thank you, sir.
thank you.
We appreciate it. Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you all.
I'm going to flip something. We are beyond our time, as indicated. I knew tonight would be full of engagement. We have not been together in a while, and there's quite a bit for us to cover. I want to go to 50-20, and then we'll go to the preference policy, and then we're going to spend some time with PSU. So 50-20, I hope you are still there, and I apologize about the delay. SEI, CDP. Are you with us? Can you hear me?
We are here.
We're here.
We got you. We're here.
Thank you. Thanks for your patience.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us to come and speak about 50-20 and give you our latest update. I'll just start with the big update, which is that we are now under construction. So we're very excited to have have crossed that threshold. But we can go to the next slide. So I'm Jessica Woodruff. I'm the Director of Development, CDP.
Tony Hobson, President CL, Self-Enhancement Inc.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Sahan McKelvey. I am Director of our Community and Family Programs Department at SEI Self-Enhancement Inc.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Eric Payne, the CEO of Community Development Partners.
All right, we can go to the next slide. So this is just a statement of our joint work and our excitement to be here talking with you about 5020, which is 63 units of preference policy housing, all 63 units and ground floor commercial. We did focus this presentation on really just an update from the last time we spoke with you a few months ago. So we'll get started with our updates. Next slide. Eric, do you want to start and then SEI can go?
Sure, that sounds great. Yeah, as I said, I'm Eric Payne, the CEO of CDP. And yeah, this partnership with SEI started back in 2019 when we started working together on this like larger concept called Alberta Alive, when the vision was really to have a kind of multi-site affordable housing along Alberta that would serve Black families. And honored to be in partnership with SEI. Like, we were so fond and impressed by the organization, and looking forward to getting these first homes opened up. The first two sites, which are along Alberta at 8th and at Grand, are well under construction, and 5020 is the latest project to start construction. The work really started back in 2017 when the first sites were acquired. So we've kind of been at it, working on Alberta Live overall for five years, and yeah, excited to be bringing over 60 new homes for families coming up. As you can see here, the Alberta Live project that's under construction has 52 units available that are at or below 60% AMI, incorporating VASH vouchers, which will serve veterans. And we're on schedule to complete and welcome residents in April. It's actually April of 2023, since we're already past 2022. That's coming up soon here. And it's fun to see the buildings like going up and be able to get a sense of scale now as we walk down Alberta. Our office is located on Alberta in the Alberta Abbey, the former Mallory Avenue Christian Church that's just off of MLK. So happy to be working in our backyard. And yeah, Tony, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Yeah, we are, still very excited about being in this space, but we still feel like we're very young in this space. Let me just be perfectly transparent. This is a new space for us, and given all of the challenges that we see in our community, we felt the need actually to step into this space. Being the largest African American nonprofit in Oregon, actually, and seeing some 16,000 individuals every year, being in 5 different school districts. For us, this has almost became somewhat selfish based on the fact that so many of our kids and families that we have traditionally serviced in inner Northeast are now in outer Northeast or outer Southeast and a variety of other places. The schools that we service within Portland Public, their numbers are dwindling in terms of African American students at a very rapid pace. I mean, Jefferson High School, which was once our historically Black school, is dwindling in numbers, and probably in the next 3 or 4 years will be predominantly white. So housing is a major challenge that can change this. The right to return is a piece of the work, and we've actually began conversations and have had conversations over the past several years with some of our school districts about a education right to return for our kids, so that they don't have to lie about coming back to Jefferson High School or some of our inner city schools. So all of these things are part of the backdrop for us in stepping into this space, and our partnership with CDP. And obviously for us, we didn't race to get into this. CDP actually contacted us first. So we took advantage of an opportunity to be a part of this. But there's so many other pieces that I think are going to come to play. You got the Center for Black Excellence, through the bond measure for Jefferson, which is going to bring some new and different things back into the inner city. For us, just at SCI, we're looking at an African American cultural center piece that would be similar to a Jewish community center in our center. So trying to figure out how we can bring more place-based services back into the community, and that is not going to go well unless we can have more places where our folks can actually live and not have to travel from outer Northeast or outer Southeast to participate. So it's a project. This is the third effort with CDP. We feel good about it, but we're still learning. And there's still a lot more to learn, not only about the partnership itself, but this space, this low-income housing space. But we're dedicated to it. It's becoming more and more of a priority. We're looking at how to hire within in our own FCI world so that we can beef up our knowledge so that we can be excellent in this space for the good of our community.
Thank you. We can go to the next slide. So this was just a couple images I thought we could share. I think it's a good illustration of the work that we're doing on the Alberta Alive sites that we've already got under construction ahead of 5020, and is a good match of, I think, CDP and SCI's kind of what we bring to the table of both real estate development and education. So this was a NAMAC field trip we did with MLK Junior elementary students, and something that we're going to be doing more of at 5020 with educational tours. We can go to the next. We'll go to the next slide. And actually could go to the next. So for 5020, as I mentioned, we are under construction. We closed at the end of July and broke ground on August 3rd. I do want to just kind of recognize how important that was, because this project actually, as long as people in the city of Portland have been working on this project, it did get held up in the shortage of private activity bonds at the state. So I just wanted to acknowledge that we were told that we may not be able to close this project until next calendar year. But City of Portland staff and State of Oregon staff worked together to find a slot so we could go ahead and close this deal given the importance for the city. So just want to applaud those efforts to help us get going. And we should be completing construction and opening the very end of next year. We are, just getting out of the ground at 3% complete, and DMW ESB contracted at 30%. You can go to the next slide. So the construction team, I know we've been asked about this before, so I just wanted to note that LMC Construction is the prime general contractor. They are partnered with Almar, a minority-owned general contractor, and made a committed effort to putting a 100% minority site team management together. So, so just wanted to share that. We can go to the next. So like I said, we're really in the very early days of construction. So what we're focused on now, and then I'll turn it over to SEI as well to go through some of the services and other items that we're working on. But, construction in, all across the state is much harder today than it was a few years ago, with mostly staffing and supply chain disruption. So we're managing construction very closely. We're also, will very soon be starting to engage the artist from the neighborhood that will be involved in the project. We'll be working to refine our retail strategy, which is targeted to be leased up to minority and women-owned businesses. And we will be doing more student tours all the way from elementary to master's students at PSU. And we know it'll come soon that we'll be starting to work with PHB on the preference policy leasing. And Sahan, do you want to take over on the next slide?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jessica. And just a couple things just to the current slide regarding what's next. Jessica spoke to just some of the intentionality behind engaging community artists, engaging community students. Tony spoke also eloquently to the fact that we are the largest minority-owned business in the state of Oregon, the largest minority nonprofit, actually second largest minority-owned business after Grand Ron, but largest nonprofit that is Black-owned in the state of Oregon. And some of these things are very important to us. Jessica also spoke to the retail space that will be on the ground floor. It is very important for us to be as intentional as possible, and we are doing that to ensure that we have Black-owned businesses in those spaces, women-owned businesses in those spaces. And I did get a chance to see the memo that I think you guys are going to go through a little bit later from the research committee on current preference policy buildings. And one of the themes that resonated throughout that memo was just people feeling a lack of ownership, a lack of voice. And so some of these things that we're trying to do intentionally as just we're in the foundation of these projects is to try to foster that sense of ownership in our community, that sense of community belonging. We want this to feel like it is a community space. And at SEI, that's who we are. We are a community-led, a community-driven, and an agency that exists for our community to be able to thrive. And this is an extension of that, of who we are. And we want the feel of these spaces to reflect that as well. So you can go to the next slide and we can talk some more about some of the resident services that SEI will have a big part in. And there's a lot of stuff that goes on at SEI. There's a lot of stuff that we want to be able to, and that we are excited to be able to bring to our community and to bring to these community spaces as we build community there. You can go to the next slide just to look at some of the stuff that would entail. But as I said, I'm the director of our Community and Family Programs departments. We have a lot of community services that come out of this department. And this is not an exhaustive list. This is some of the things that we do. And one of the primary functions of our resident services and all of the Alberta Alive projects will be to ensure accessibility for the residents of these buildings to the services that we provide at SEI. There's a lot of ways that we can do that, and we want to be able to do that in a way that, again, fosters and grows community, that fosters and grows ownership, that fosters and grows belonging. So we will be able to do things like having some of our parent-child development services groups held at these sites. We will be able to do things like having parenting classes held at these sites. We will be able to do energy assistance outreach events at these sites. We will be able to provide some of our parent engagement and parent involvement events that are designed specifically to build relational community and to bring togetherness into the spaces where we are with the parents that we work with. Tony spoke to the numbers that we service at SEI, about 16,000 individuals. And our goal and our aim and our mission and who we are is to bring community and togetherness into those spaces with those folks. So this is going to be what we are seeking to do. And we don't just want to be a resident services provider that follows the cookie cutter mold of what may have been provided in the past. We want to be a resident services provider that really looks to create community-driven spaces that, again, fosters a spirit of just belonging and togetherness, and frankly speaks to a lot of the concerns that I read about in the memo that, again, is going to be discussed later tonight. So with that said, I think that is the conclusion of the slides of our presentation, and would love to be able to open up for any questions from Oversight Committee members.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the presentation. Thanks for the information. And it is exciting news that groundbreaking has happened. Questions, comments from Oversight Committee members? I'll begin on this side. Gabrielle, any question or comment? Ms. Virgin? Jillian? John?
I don't think I got a question, but Just as usual, I guess Tony is taking up a lot of space. He got loomed, he got big, you know, and I appreciate what he's bringing to that space. You know, I mean, the diversity and the variety of different services. I think that's really important. But again, it's always my concern is that, you know, we're getting the biggest bang for our buck, and that the community is not being used to get to where they're trying to go. I mean, you know, that we collectively support where this is trying to go. And that somewhere along the line is that our community is going to get back to where SCI and all those places are going to be able to have the students and the services and all that stuff that come together, that it all works so that our community continues to work. So, yeah, way to go, T. Keep on moving, I guess.
I appreciate that, John, and know that the reason why I say that we're young in this, I mean, we're willing to have the conversations to learn as much as we need to learn to make sure that this is done in a way that we all can be proud of. We know what we're good at, but I also know what we aren't good at. So what we aren't good at, you find folks that are good at that, and you ask the appropriate questions to build the kind of foundation necessary to move it forward. So that's the spirit that we would be coming from.
And you knew you was going to neutralize me with that one because it's all about that love, bro. You already know. Yeah, so, yeah.
Very good. Excellent. Congratulations. Thank you very much. Yes, Molly?
I just want to make one comment. You know, Jessica alluded to the partnership we needed to craft with OHCS, the state. This project got caught up in some delays with having available financing, and this is really a story of the power of this committee and the work you've been doing for all these years. We were able to invoke the coalition that you've built and the powerful support around 50/20 to encourage OHCS to reconsider. So I just wanted to speak to, this is a continuous learning, and where it's all about lessons learned is going to be really the theme tonight, but wanted to say that it's because of this committee, we think that got us over the finish line here.
Thank you, Molly. Thanks for mentioning that. And I've said it on a regular basis how much I appreciate the continued investment and work and leverage that this committee has brought into the space. Our commitment is not to be a group that rubber stamps. It's not who we are. We're a group that's going to fight for the benefit of the individuals who've been impacted by historic decisions. And so that means we have some uncomfortable conversations. That means we deal with some issues. That means we address some things. That's who we are. That's the work that we bring into this space. And so it's good to know that it matters and that it's being captured. And great to know that there are opportunities like what was just presented that then can continue to foster. This is going to take the work of all of us. It's a collective effort for us to address the history of our city and to bring some turn. To that extent, then, again, thank you for presenting tonight. I extend my hand this way because that's the screen I'm looking at.
I'm looking at this one over.
And you're looking at that one. So, but thank you for being here tonight. I am going to, again, as chair, make another adjustment to our schedule. We are now at 7:15, and I want to make sure that we give ample time to Portland State's review. And so I'm going to ask them to come forward. Divisha, I am not by any means dismissing the value of the preference policy update, and I appreciate your flexibility in this moment.
Are you dismissing the last group?
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. You're free to go or hang out or however you want to do it. Let me say this about the Portland State University preference policy evaluation. For those who are here to testify tonight, thank you very much. I don't want you by any means to feel anything but love and support and concern for your lived experience. We want you to be free to communicate and share what is real. Our concern is multifaceted. We are concerned about multiple layers of this particular memo and the work that has brought us into this space. And so be as comfortable, take a deep breath, and share So thank you for being here. Thanks for being willing to come in and talk to us. The only way we can know is by hearing from those who are living in the environment. Thank you.
Is this? It's green. I'm Ami Thurber. I'm an assistant professor at Portland State in the School of Social Work. And my colleague Lisa Bates, who you know, and I have been studying the Northeast Preference Policy and the impact of the policy on resident well-being, particularly for residents living in the affordable rental apartments. And we are here to provide an update on that research. We're joined by, in person, Mr. Wilkins, who's a resident in one of the buildings, and on Zoom by our research assistants, Keisha Muya and Susan Halverson, and some additional residents, I think, if they were able to stay. You can put, next slide, please. Our goal tonight is to do a couple different things to refresh this committee on the purpose of our research and how we've designed our study, to share some preliminary findings from the study, but then really to bring forward some concerns that have arisen that were not what we were looking for, but that came directly from residents, that were urgent, that we wanted to get to this committee sooner, and give you the chance to hear directly from some residents. And then we'll talk a little bit about our next steps. So that's where we're heading. So next slide, please. As a reminder, the focus of our study is on understanding the impact of the preference policy on well-being. And when we talk about well-being, we're thinking about residents feeling connected to the people where they live and the place of where they live, quality and access to resources and services, the physical and natural environment, their experience of civic engagement and participation, and also their experience of equity and inclusion. And so you may recall that we piloted a small version of this study in 2019 and then received funding from Robert Wood Johnson Foundation to do a larger scale study. And in this current wave, we conducted surveys, more than 150 surveys with residents in all 7 preference policy buildings. We also did focus groups with residents in all those buildings and interviews. The pandemic certainly complicated data collection in these buildings. We'd intended to do it all face-to-face in person. We did that when it was safe to do so, but we also made it possible to do online and on phone and tried to prioritize resident safety as much as possible. You may recall that when we came last time, we let you know we wanted to survey and do focus groups with people on the wait list. We also completed that, but we're not going to be talking about that today. We'll save that for when we come back to present our final report. So we're still analyzing data right now from these initial surveys, interviews, and focus groups, but I want to give you some high-level themes that we're seeing so far. So we can go to the next slide. And we're going to be just speaking briefly to these before we turn to some of the resident stories. But the kind of high-level themes we're seeing so far relate to residents' ties to their neighborhood, what residents appreciate about the neighborhood, their experiences of prejudice and safety in the neighborhood, and sense of community. So I'll say a little bit about each of these. You can go to the next slide. So in terms of residents' ties to the neighborhood, the vast majority of residents have lived more than half their life in the neighborhood and are motivated to stay in the neighborhood. That's a major reason they applied to the preference policy. And the vast majority are involved in the community. And so this suggests to us that the preference policy in these apartments is largely serving those who it was intended to, and also that residents both desire and contribute to creating a vibrant community within the neighborhood. The next slide. The second theme that we're seeing is just related to what residents appreciate about the neighborhood. They appreciate the convenience in terms of accessing resources and services, accessing quality and affordable food, the convenience of getting to work and school, and this appears to be another important way that this policy is positively contributing to well-being for residents. Next slide. The third theme from our surveys and interviews and focus groups is really related to both experiences of discrimination and safety. So this slide specifically is speaking to residents' experience of discrimination and prejudice. Over half of residents surveyed described having experienced themselves discrimination. Most of that was related to racism. And almost 70% said there's a lot of prejudice in the neighborhood. And the next slide focuses on safety. Most residents let us know that they don't feel safe in the neighborhood at night. Go to the next slide. And we heard a lot about, kind of drilled down in that in interviews and focus groups, and we'll report more fully on that later. But issues of safety and prejudice are negatively contributing to well-being for residents, and these were themes across all 7 buildings. And then the next slide is the last theme we wanted to introduce that we're seeing is related to sense of community. And what we found here is really mixed results. Most residents feel a strong sense of belonging to the neighborhood, but desire stronger social cohesion, particularly in their buildings. And so as we heard about these, all 4 of these themes, residents had lots of ideas, suggestions, recommendations. We will be including all of those in our full report. Some of those recommendations, have implications for the building. Some have implications for broader kind of neighborhood and citywide kinds of interventions. But in the meantime, as you know from the memo you received earlier this week, we also heard a lot of concerns that went beyond what we initially asked from residents that were about things like building design, management, and services. And I want to make it clear that our study did not include any questions directly about these things. These are things that residents wanted to talk about, and in fact, wanted to talk about more than anything else. And we wanted to honor what we were hearing by making sure we brought that forward. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Keisha Muya, who is on Zoom, and who'll lead the next part of the discussion.
Thank you. Yes. I have a question for you, Margaret. What building do you live in? Okay. Okay, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is James Wilkins. I've lived in Beatrice Morris for 3 years now, and my concern is for the handicap in that building because of the fact is to get in the garbage room or laundry room is a major hassle. Getting out is also a hassle because we have automatic door closers on it. I was going into my apartment and got bumped by the door, ended up hitting the wall, and broke my leg. And so I spent a month in rehab. And the other issue is, my biggest issue is that when the fire broke out, nobody knew exactly what's supposed to happen with the people in wheelchairs. We have 4 people in wheelchairs on each floor. And it took 3 days to get a response back that we're supposed to wait at the landings for the fire department to come and more or less carry us down. And it's just like, doesn't make sense to me in a way that I'm listening to all these new buildings going in and everything else, and nobody's addressing the issue for the handicap in there because there's only stairs, and if the elevator goes down, I was trapped on the floor for 4.5 hours one day waiting for the elevator to be fixed. Couldn't go down at all, and not only me, but others. And if the elevator's broke one way or the other, we're at a major disadvantage. And that's what I.
Thank you. Before you continue, let me say this, if you don't mind, if I could just interject, to all of the residents who shared. Thank you. Thank you for being courageous enough to come and then to tell us your experience. We appreciate that. Okay.
Maybe. I will go over the next slide. We just wanted to say our next steps and then open it up for questions. We, as the research team, are going to continue analysis of the data we've collected, do the comparison between preference policy residents and waitlist residents, and try and learn more of what we can from that. We'll be completing that report and printing a printed report that will go to all the residents in preference policy buildings. It will also go to you. We will return here to give you a more comprehensive overview of the research. And we've been able to support the research to action team, the R2A team, with the Robert Wood Johnson funds. That will continue until the end of the year, and then that work ends in December. I don't know if there's anything else, Keisha, that you want to say about R2A's next steps. So we just want to thank you all for your time and attention, and thank the residents who participated in the study and shared their concerns with us, and certainly those who are here with us this evening, and also thank the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation for funding this work. We welcome your comments and questions, and I know residents in particular are interested in hearing what you have to say.
So, Miss Margaret, my sincerest apologies to you. I believe you were calling my old number, and I got a new number since I met with the folks from PSU and did not realize that they did not have it. So I just emailed Miss Keisha to give her my new number, or if you're fine with her giving me your number, I will call you tomorrow if you're fine with that. But my apologies, and I'm so sorry. Well, you just let me know when's going to be the good time, and I will call you. I will for you.
Oh, my. I'll just, in full transparency, I'm really having a visceral response, emotional response. There is significant impact listening to the stories, and not to conflate it, not to put myself in someone else's scenario. Close, because I've lived in the arena of Section 8 housing and a host of other experiences from my own background, and know what it is to be in a space where people treat you like you're less than. And so I don't want to make it about me. I don't like what I heard. This isn't what we have given our lives to for the last 7 years, to keep showing up month after month and to interact with the organizations and representatives of these organizations around this work. We were very clear and in a myriad of ways over the period of time in regard to the quality of life, the care and concern, sensitivity and intentionality with how individuals would be housed. It wasn't to create environments like the report, like the memo. And so it would be wonderful, at least for me, maybe not for them, if some EDs were in our meeting tonight so we could have a different kind of conversation that needs to be had. So, since they are not, we will be reaching out. You can absolutely be assured that we will have direct interaction with executive directors. So you can count on that. The concern, though, and I want to give space for all of the Oversight Committee members to weigh in, the concern is, what can we do? It is more than just being aware of the issues. It's also problem solving. But I want to give space to each of the committee members to express their hearts. I'm deeply bothered by where we are. This isn't what was intended. I want you to know from us, this is not what we intended to be your lived experience. Gabrielle.
I don't know where to start or what to say. It's just very emotional for me to listen to this at, I believe it was either my first or second meeting as a member of this committee, that I checked several of the property managers around diversity, equity, inclusion. And at that time, I felt a little bit of, I was new and I was pretty blunt. And I remember walking away from that meeting concerned that it wasn't being heard and it wasn't being received. And now today I have confirmation that it was not being heard and it wasn't being received. So I don't know what the solution is. I can only tell you how angry and upset and disappointed I am that programs that are designed to empower individuals are destroying their livelihood and their mental health. And I'm not objective because my brother lives in one of these properties and he has been in a wheelchair since birth. And I had to sit with him at one of these events where they were trying an eviction process and not understanding they were violating his Americans with Disabilities Act. And because I'm his sister and I know that law intimately, I was there with him. So I'm very emotional because it's very personal in that, and also because of my work. I've been in many of these buildings. I have met with many of these residents. And so I'm intimately familiar that it is even worse than what you're seeing here. And if you just open the paper, if you read articles, if you see what's happening with many residents that have had to put signs, who have had to protest, who are living in conditions that no one should be forced to live in. My question is, where is the accountability going to be? What are the next steps? It has to be more than just bringing in the executive directors of these organizations and having a conversation, because the conversations aren't changing anything. There has to be a consequence. And there has to be an urgency where this is addressed, not next month, not 2 months from now, but now.
Thank you very much. Ms. Virgie.
I'm thankful for PSU doing the interviews and getting these things out in the open, because what it tells me is that anytime you get a group together, a condo, and multiple people living there, needs vary, including the disabled. And what's missing is staffing. There are disability specialists. There are people that can meet that they can go to and get assistance from. I think the property manager probably has his or her hands full, but it doesn't mean they can't receive staff assistance. This is a wonderful opportunity to hire people, jobs, and give them space down on the ground floor, like we talked about businesses, and have them available to help and assist those that are living in the bigger world out there. And the situation for safety, to have a security guard covering more than one property is almost unthinkable. I think you do need someone there to see who's coming in, cameras for sure, and people should be meeting and discussing this as a building concern for all the residents in there so that they are aware that it's just not your space, it's our space. And they can talk about these issues and include the Oversight Committee, include the people that are doing the building, the organization, nonprofits that provide services, give them a chance to utilize their skills, their abilities to assist those in the building. And I think you'll see some positive changes in the near future if you can get people that are skilled involved.
Thank you very much. John.
Well, I'm going to try to be a little careful here, surgical to some degree, because I have mixed feelings about this kind of stuff, especially about research. And, you know, because if you push hard enough through a few things, you're going to find what you're looking for. So on that side of it, I do appreciate what you brought to bring to light formulas for successful living. You know, I'm an urban studies major, my background. Grew up in the projects in New Jersey, in Patterson. My building was 15 stories. And some of the stuff that I heard tonight, and that was over 50 years ago, some of the stuff is the same stuff I heard then. And my mother was the tenant advocate. So I used to hear a lot of the similar stories. But it doesn't detract from the story in any kind of way. I mean, the stories are real, and probably the blight is real also. But I keep thinking about my history in the district and the things that we advocated for, and I don't want this committee to necessarily be hard on itself, because the growth in which we had has been what we call rapid, or accelerated, I should say. We, in the last 3 or 4 years or 5 years, we put our foot down, put the hammer down on the pedal, and we went. And we accomplished a lot of things. But I think some of the blight that occurred, or the pain that came, you know, on the other side, like I do the business association here in the district. And for the last 7 years, we had always talked about putting aside some capital for risk mitigation, because we didn't know what was going to happen when we moved 200 small black businesses into the framework in a rapid order. We didn't know what the consequences of that was going to be, because we didn't do the forehand research on that. We didn't try to figure out what was going to happen. And so after talking to some of the supportive organizations about what they had in their quiver, we kept feeling like something was wrong with us. They kept looking at us kind of strange. And so one day I asked, well, why y'all looking at it? You got a personal agenda? No, we don't have a personal agenda, but they do. And who were they? They were the funding people. They were the people who had given the money to these black businesses. But now their concern is that there's a percentage of those black businesses that's not paying back the money, right? Now, there's probably 101 reasons why, but we were in a hurry in 2 years to put 200 businesses into the framework. That was what our primary address was. So there were things that occurred as a result of us doing that. And so what I'm grateful for is that those issues are being revealed here today. so that we can get an opportunity to take some corrective action as we continue to move forward. So that's the one praise one thing that I'm bringing as a graciousness and an enlightenment for myself, is that y'all are revealing to us the vulnerabilities in the construct. And I am grateful for that. So we can get on with the business of doing what we originally set out to do here. And that was to bring to light some formulas for successful living, not necessarily ours. And there was another part too that I kept getting concerned about, and that's called the quality of life. And for so long, we have fought PBOT, NODOT, and all these people that are here in the district for a lot of the affordable housing vouchers didn't go necessarily citywide. A lot of those vouchers were restricted or put on the corridor, the MLK corridor, in places like this. And so we were always fighting emissions. How can you have a family, 5, kids and everybody growing up on a major corridorway, and then we start talking about quality of life? Could we slow down traffic and all that? So there's a lot of mitigating things that go into this. So I'm real grateful that I got an opportunity to listen to this tonight. But I'm hoping that my feedback is not inviting some kind of notion that I don't care, because that's not really what the point is here for me. What's the point is here is that the reality factors are being revealed, so now I can getting on with the business addressing that. So thanks for that opportunity, man.
Jillian.
Thank you. Before this meeting, I asked probably about a dozen questions that were technical in nature. I won't go through the answers to them, but one of the things that I perceived as a cause is that there's not enough money at these properties to have 24-hour security guards, that these properties are not paying back their deferred developer fee at the rate that they should be. They're not cash flowing like they should be. And I'm looking at the PSH, and I'm looking at the number of vouchered units. I'm looking at the vouchered units that were set aside for domestic violence, and there's no JOS funds coming along with that. And I think that it's important to reevaluate how much it takes to house folks coming out of homelessness, how much the service dollars that are needed, that in order to have 24-hour coverage, it can't just be somebody that lives on the property. I'm a developer, and we actually try not to do that anymore because there's when your property manager is also your neighbor, sometimes personal conflicts become rent conflicts. So I'm not suggesting that people have to live on site, but that's a huge budget stretch to do a 24-hour coverage. But where's the funding for it? The $300 or $400 per unit per year for resident services is not enough when we are housing folks that are at 30% AMI. It's not enough when we are housing folks and we are using the least restrictive screening criteria possible. It's not enough to keep everybody safe. A lot of these properties have vouchers. The voucher reimbursement rates haven't gone up in 4 years. 4, 3, at least 3. And the $10,000 per unit per year for PSH was set 7 years ago. And there's been, in that time, there's been a huge increase in expenses. We've all been personally feeling it, I'm sure. These properties are feeling it, and they have obligations to their investors as well, including PHB. And so I think that there are creative solutions. There is certainly accountability and holding sponsors accountable for promising something and then not being able to deliver on that promise. But there's only so much money. And one of the things I read in here, for example, was that there's high turnover. Well, a lot of times you experience high turnover if you're not able to pay someone what they can make somewhere else. So if someone can be a property manager at a market rate apartment building and earn $22 an hour, but all they can make at affordable housing is $19 an hour, guess what? They're going to go where they can get paid more. Any of us would. right? It's not even a critique. And I'm not critiquing the wage rates that our nonprofit partners are charging, because they're also being constrained. But it's time to reevaluate, where are we getting these numbers from? Where are we getting that this is enough to do resident services? How do we know that that's enough? How do we know that $10,000 per unit per year is still enough, given the accelerated growth in wages, the great resignation, COVID? Where is this data that's showing us that that's actually enough money? And I'm not saying, throw everything away, but looking at the responses to my questions, it seems to me that these projects are not able to afford to do some of the things that would improve the quality of life, and that the answer to that is to create a funding vehicle to fund these services, to fund resident services, to fund permanent supportive housing, to fund, and specifically mentioned, to fund security guards. I don't think there's any funding source that is currently available that's like, okay, here's your money for security guards, right? Property management, yes. Resident services, yes. PSH, yes. But security, where's that budget? There's no, there's nowhere to find it. So I'm happy to talk about this in more detail. Full disclosure, like I said, I'm a developer and I have a project with PHB, and so it may sound really self-serving to be advocating for more money. And maybe it is, but also I really believe that this needs to be reevaluated on a kind of meta level, and we can't just keep doing what we're doing and expecting different results. If a one full-time resident, if a half-time resident services coordinator isn't doing it, then maybe it needs to be a full-time person. When there's 20 VASH vouchers and 20, homeless folks, formerly homeless folks, it takes a while for folks to get settled and get stabilized, and that takes help, and help means people, and people means we have to pay them. And so that's, I know I don't want to dig too deep into the numbers in this meeting, and we certainly don't have time to go over 7 pro formas together, although, that would be nerdy and fun. But I think that we have to do a real reevaluation of what these expense restrictions, what these reimbursement rates mean for people who are living there, what the impact is of not increasing, reimbursement. And I know this is Home Forward and not PHB, but not increasing reimbursement rates on vouchers. So I think it's one of PCRI's properties has 29 vouchers. So expenses over the time it's been open have been going up, but the amount of money that they've been receiving has not, right? So you have a wedge coming here, and that's how can they possibly afford to include more staff when they're not even getting enough revenue to cover the increases in expenses?
Thank you. We are clock, and I am going to ask those who are willing to hang out a little while to hang out a little while. We are going to suspend the other items on the Oversight Committee agenda and just won't get to them tonight. I don't want to run past this. Hold on one moment.
We do have the NOFA that's going out next week.
Okay.
So if folks have any questions.
All right. We'll come. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Because it's been brought to my attention that there are some executive directors that are in the meeting via Zoom, and I would love to give an opportunity for a response. So when I said that if we were able to engage, the conversation would be different, that's what I was inferring. That an opportunity to engage and hear some response, it would be beneficial for residents to understand. It would be beneficial for the committee to understand. I know it's nuanced. We understand that. But the conversation has to happen for us to move into accountability. I am not suggesting or inferring that any individual set out to have this particular impact, but intent and impact are not always the same. And when you are aware of the impact, it is important that there is response, I think, in that moment. Dr. Bates, I saw your hand go up. So I want to give you an opportunity also, and Molly, I'd love to give you an opportunity as well.
I want to add some detail for those who perhaps have not had a chance to read the entire memo, and particularly in response to some of the questions, Jillian, that you asked. Certainly, staffing, management services are a challenge in affordable housing. However, residents that we have spoken to who live in buildings with supportive housing services included have told us repeatedly they have never once seen a staff member from supportive housing services organizations in their buildings. No one has contact information for any support services that might be available for crisis response. Repeatedly, people are describing incidents, challenges, like very serious problems that their neighbors are having. They don't want to call the police and have the police take people away. They don't want to bring that. They have no recourse and there is no information. We are also talking about property management practices in which you heard Ms. Margaret talk about getting an eviction notice. There were many other people in the building who received termination notices at the same time. We did a focus group with residents months later in which everyone literally checked their bank balance 20th of the month and their rent had not been deposited. That's a pretty basic function. You're not paying the bills if you're not cashing the rent checks. So the sort of breadth, the depth, the scope, and again, the overwhelming nature of this in the research project. We did not seek this information. We did not actually ask anyone any questions about property management. But over and over again, residents have said things like, I couldn't wait to get back here, and now I'm desperately trying to leave. I can't talk to you or engage in these conversations about the neighborhood and the community because I do not have basic safety in my home. And I would just add that some of these issues were nascent and apparent in our first pilot study. And in 2020, we did provide detailed building by building information to the organizations that own and manage these properties, the property managers and executive directors, to share with them these issues. So this is not the first time that we have attempted to communicate what we have heard as a side effect to the conversations that we've had with residents.
Thanks, Lisa, for that. Dr. Bates, I'm sorry. Thank you for that clarification. The executive directors that are on, do we know who is? Is Dan in tonight? Is Kimberly in? Yes, Dan is on. Dan, if you wouldn't mind, sir, I'd love to give an opportunity for you to engage, respond. Yep. And just a brief interruption, if you could say what properties you oversee and are responsible for. Thank you, Dan. Is Kimberly Horner on? Hi, Kimberly.
I know some of you who've spoken today, and I really lean into you saying, please whisper to you, send an email, write me a note. Tell me who the black people are in the buildings, so I can work with public safety to get them out. I don't get it. People do not respond to black police on the executive director, and they know that. And I feel bad about that because it is a tough situation to be in. So I don't want to take up all the time today, but I do think that there is room for us to improve. I also think that there's some help that we need from the Portland Housing Bureau as well as the state and our Oversight Committee. In closing, I think it's very important for our supportive housing providers to really have a voice in who the next director is for the Portland Housing Bureau, because some of these decisions are getting made are going to really make or break how we afford housing. And again, I think it's not just a preference policy issue, but it's an affordable housing, it's a neighborhood, it's a citywide issue. So I'm here. My staff knows how to reach me. Jeremy Beckman is on this call too. She's doing it all that she can, a fabulous job. We've got good people who are just in unusual times.
Thank you, Kimberly. I appreciate it. Sarah, I want to give you an opportunity.
Thank you. I'm Claire, Superintendent Executive Director.
Sarah, thank you very much. Dan, thank you. And Kimberly, thank you. I will respond by saying I understand it's nuanced, and we understand it's difficult, and we also understand we must respond. We don't have the option to say it's in the city, it's all around us, and so here we are. What we have is the responsibility to say, and I'm not saying that you guys are saying that. I'm not inferring that that's your communication. I agree, it is everywhere, which only demands that we then become strategic, intentional, and we engage even more so. And so, Dan, to your statement, I would say, yes, we need to have a meeting before a November meeting. Yes, we need to have a meeting that specifically brings in the minds that are engaged in this work and members of the Portland Housing Bureau, and think through how to engage with members of or residents that are living in the buildings to engage around how to create and respond to the items that have been identified. It is absolutely a challenge. I understand that, and potentially, I will say this, when we first began this process, and Dr. Bates can affirm it, when we first began this process, one of the things we understood was that all of the resources could not be driven by the prescribed ways of doing business, and it was going to require something greater than just the utilization of those historic processes. Unfortunately, through change of elected officials and people in seats, then priorities change also. It does not reduce or remove the fact that we are where we are, and residents deserve the best possible scenario that they can have. I think it demands of us that we roll up our sleeves and do a different or go into a deeper type of work. So I appreciate your responsiveness and willingness to engage collectively to address these issues. Molly, I want to give you an opportunity to respond as well.
Thank you. Obviously, this is a very concerning report, and the way our residents experience affordable housing is key to the mission of PHB, and we're financing projects, but the hard work at the end of the day is how you operate and manage buildings and how you provide a well-being. It's about the well-being of our residents, and that's really what we are here. I know Kimberly mentioned we're gonna have to address many things when you have a permanent director, but there are things we need to address now in this interim period. And so what I'm going to recommend is a series of things. First of all, we do need to have a work group put together with members of this committee, as, hoping some people will be willing to volunteer, in addition to representatives from the, there's 7 different buildings, 7 different property management companies. They each have different companies, so it is fascinating to me to learn more about where there are themes, where there are things that are systemic, where there are things that are structural, what things are actually specific to those operations and to those buildings. There are things we need to see around policies and how we set these buildings up in the first place. So we have a solicitation that's about to go out the door. We've looked at this report. We haven't dived too deep in. We need a little bit of time to really dive in. But I do want us to really look at some of our underwriting and metrics and really think about how we're supporting resident services and our staffing in these unprecedented times. We need to understand a little bit of context, though, around we need to dive in deeper so that we know how much of this is related to lease-up, a pandemic, the fact that some of these are converting and they don't have necessarily the level of resources than when they get to stabilized operations. That's going to be a different, we need to look at that too. And what can we do a little bit around sort of way we structure our loans. I will say our money tends to go in as capital. Our money does not go in as operations. That goes, that is sort of fundamental in how we get our resources. But that being said, what comes down to is how you pay the rent, and the rent pays for how you support the residents. And the other key piece of that is how we're partnering with the joint office. So I've already had a quick conversation with Interim Director Singleton. She definitely is wanting to understand a little bit more as well about these different issues. What I'm hearing today is how we need to think a little bit about how we mix populations. We need to be careful about how we mix in supportive housing with preference families. I think this is part of that lessons learned. I think that's going to be key for us to look at in terms of how we're doing the solicitation up front. And the other piece is design elements, I'm hearing, and how we are really securing the buildings. Those are things that we can influence. Those are things that we can ask architects to do a better job of. So we need to dive in on those areas. But I wanted to first but make sure I thanked the residents, if they're still here, who came and testified. Thank you. Your feedback is noted and will make a difference. Because if we don't know, we can't change. We need to know what data, we need the data, so we have outcomes. And we can do a better job of doing monitoring and asking those deeper questions of each of our partners.
Thank you very much, Jillian.
Thanks, Molly. You know you can call on me for whatever task group for this, and I'll dive into the numbers with you. I did want to address 2 things that I heard. One was from Dr. Bates, and that is that There's a service provider who hasn't been seen at all, and that goes back to accountability, right? Like, maybe it's not enough money, but also if you're getting some money, you should show up sometimes, right? Like, zero every day, maybe no, but 0 days is problematic. And how, have we thought about, and maybe we should think about, when a service provider isn't performing what they're supposed to be doing, what is the fix for that? Is it a capacity building issue? Is it they need to be replaced with a different service provider? But that seems like a pretty big deal to me, that there's PSH money going and nobody there. So I wanted to just mention that as part of that conversation, that when someone's not performing and they're getting paid to perform, we should stop paying them. Or help them figure out how to do the job. One of those two things. The other thing was, I agree with the executive directors that were here that there are a lot of challenges Portland-wide. But the preference policy was crafted with care and intent to impact a specific population of Portland. And therefore, the solution has to be crafted with the same care and intent. It can't be the preference policy wasn't a Portland-wide solution. It was a north-northeast neighborhood solution. It was a way for Black Portlanders to come back to their historic neighborhood. And therefore, these issues of the preference policy are disproportionately impacting Black folks. And so while it may be a citywide issue, there was, it's right there, right? This was a strategy, and therefore the solution needs to have, this same kind of exacting strategy. And it can't just be, well, the city's a mess. I'm not saying that anybody said that, but I think also we have to look at what are we doing here we've done so much here that's different and special, and therefore the solution, it has to be different and special as well. And we have to listen to what these residents are telling us about these properties, not what residents in general are telling us about resident properties or affordable housing properties. And I don't think that those two solutions are mutually exclusive, but I do think that because of the design of the preference policy and the intended impact of the preference policy and the success of that impact of the preference policy, these issues are disproportionately affecting Black people. And that's not okay. And that, therefore, this needs a different attention and care, and has, to me, a heightened sense of urgency.
Yeah, the last thing we want to do is re-traumatize people who've been traumatized.
That's right.
Dr. Bates.
Thank you. I want to say something on behalf of the research team. Dr. Thurber and I will not be the people who engage in a process to resolve property management and resident services in these buildings. That is not our role. The reason that we made a point to bring and center residents' voices here and work with residents who wanted to speak directly to this committee was because those are the people who must be centered in the process. Agreed. And I will repeat.
Agreed.
The recommendations in the memo are not our recommendations as faculty at Portland State University or scholars. They are the recommendations of the advisory group of residents to the project who want to see building by building space for residents to voice their specific concerns, to share, and they have many ideas about how to improve practices on site, starting with having regular resident meetings in which they can meet one another, build community, and create a sense of mutual progress and action. And they want accountability on an ongoing basis outside of just this space. This was one opportunity to speak very publicly and to be, for us to support their comments, not just as individual anecdotes, which is how they experience sharing these concerns. They experience them as individualized complaints that go oftentimes nowhere, or may be resolved for one person, but not in a universal way. And we were able to come and share and validate that this is not just a few complainers, this is not a one-off or two-off situation, that these are widespread and across all buildings. But this is not what our work is. It is not to create performance plans for each building and nonprofit owner-managers. We don't live there. The people who live in the buildings are the ones who know what the issues are, have very clear ideas on how to solve them, and need to be engaged going forward. And it is to them that everyone needs to be accountable, including ourselves. That's why we have an advisory team to our research project, is so that we are accountable, and we could not let go hearing these things without bringing them to anyone's attention. These are not the focus of our research. We will complete and finish our research, which is about neighborhoods and people's experience returning to Northeast. But we couldn't sort of ethically and responsibly simply let this slide.
Thank you.
Right?
Yep.
But it's not going to be us who are in these meetings going forward.
As has been said early on in our work, as we were being critiqued as the Oversight Committee, and who are we, and what's our lived experience, and how can we understand what people are going through, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. One of the phraseologies that was repeatedly expressed is that those who are closest to the problem are closest to the solution. So certainly engaging the individuals who live in the space is only sensible. So thank you very much for your time, and for those who've given us some moments to extend the meeting. Molly, you made mention of a NOFA that is going out. Could you expand on that for a few moments, please? And then we'll wrap up the meeting.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. I'm not gonna.
Absolutely. I don't know if we have Tanya or someone on the Jill Chen is still here. Excellent. Who can give just a very quick overview of the solicitation we're about to put out, because it's going to advance the North and Northeast housing strategy. We've got some slides. Norma?
Okay, now it's on. For the record, I'm Jill Chen, Portland Housing Bureau, Housing Investments and Portfolio Preservation Manager. I'll just go through very quickly because the upcoming solicitation is a combined metro and interstate tax increment financing solicitation. Next slide, please. I think you already have a lot of this, and I'm just very cognizant of the time, so I'm just going to say, you'll see on this particular slide there are a number of projects. We also, had mentioned a number of things that were successful. As a pointer here on this slide, you'll see that there are a number of projects that are not necessarily in the Northeast original sort of maximum indebtedness plan, but it's also going to be contributing to the preference policy residents. Those are Albino 1, Alcina, and the Kaiser Permanente. So I'm going to just go down. Next slide is a maximum indebtedness. We have 44 million. In this particular solicitation, we're going to be putting out about $40 million for properties. And the maximum indebtedness was 4 properties, 3 of which will be going into this particular solicitation. Next slide. Oh, and I should mention our goal for the maximum indebtedness was 300 to 350 units. Next slide. This one is briefly just a quick overview of what was committed to the committee about which properties were going to be in the north-northeast strategy, as well as which properties will be, so you'll see on the green, that is properties that's rentals, that's already opened. Reds are home ownership. 50/20 is on there as a red. It was originally targeted for home ownership, it's now rental. And then the blues are the ones that's going to be in this solicitation. That's Cary Boulevard, Strong. Williams and Russell is already being developed with the Williams and Russell CDC. Next slide, please. And the third site is the Kaiser project. Next slide. So this is what the solicitation was planned to be. It's 3 sites in the interstate corridor. That's Kaiser Permanente site. And these unit counts were based on estimates, based on their lot size, zoning, setbacks, and all. So the 3 sites are Kaiser Permanente, Strong Family Properties, which I think the committees are familiar with, and the Cary Boulevard site. Total subsidy that is going to be targeted is about $40 million, of which $26 million is for Metro bonds and about $14 million from the North Interstate TIF. One site, which is the Metro Portland Value Inn, that is in southwest Portland, and it is not part of the interstate corridor. And that was the only one that is a PSH project. The other ones are not targeted for PSH. So I think one of the issues that was mentioned about supportive housing and the mix with preference policy and supportive housing, we're trying to, you can call it, not included in this particular solicitation, especially given what we're hearing. Next slide. Quickly, I think most of you have already seen these slides, so I'm just going to quickly go through it. Kaiser Permanente site is about a 0.3 acre site over at North
Hey, Jill,
Park.
I'm wondering if you could just focus on the feedback we got from the ad hoc committee. That'd be great.
Okay, great. So the Kaiser site is going to be, the feedback we received was for seniors with a potential for rent assistance. And this one is, the rent assistance will be project-based, Section 8. There is a potential to use non-project-based, meaning from the, I want to say, the RARA, but those are for homeless. So again, that mix of housing could maybe a little bit difficult. The next site is for the Strong Family property. Oh, next slide, please. The feedback we received from the ad hoc advisory committee was that we should focus on families and create a mix of rentals and home ownership. And to look for opportunities for wealth creation and equity building and home ownership models. So again, in the previous slide, we mentioned that in order to also make our numbers, we're looking at 50 rentals and between 5 to 11 home ownership, with the idea that these would be more, you can call it appealing design-wise. Next slide, please. The feedback finally from the Cary Boulevard was to integrate a mix of family size, single-family homes and townhomes, and maintaining with a focus on the larger bedroom sizes with considerable use of green space. And that's also incorporating some of the learnings we've had that you heard earlier from Ira. Next slide, please. In terms of the overall themes from the ad hoc committee, the importance of integrating communities with a sort of variety, using the housing styles and the mix of uses and the locations of the homes, use of green space and sort of community space, focusing on families and seniors, and also for home ownership, considering programming that promotes wealth creation. I think given what we're hearing today, especially from Dr. Bates and the team and the residents, I'm taking copious notes. You can see I've got like 3 or 4 pages of notes about how do we incorporate a better, you can call it resident experience, especially with focus on security, safety, and accountability, and also in the lease up as well as the property management. Last slide, please. So our target is to issue the solicitation in middle of September and to have a proposals due by the first week of November, then have the evaluation sometime in early December, and to have the awards announced by January 2023.
Jill, thank you very much. I would imagine that part of tonight's discussion is has been informative to say, now, what do we need to reevaluate?
Yes.
What are the other things that we should be considering? And if you have to change the timing on that, I would strongly lean in and encourage that. As we've seen, it's not just the upfront work. It's how it then impacts and is played out, and we want to be extremely thoughtful about that. So I appreciate it. Thank you for letting us know of what is being planned. As you think through it, I'm sure that whatever adjustments need to be made.
Thank you. And I do want to thank all the members from the North-Northeast Oversight Committee who participated and provided us feedback in order for us to now put it into the solicitation. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Any other comments from the Oversight Committee members? Okay. Do we have anybody left for, anyone around for public comment? Are there any individuals who are, much of what was, there was Jennifer Fitz. Alicia Johnson. Okay. We do have a letter that Ms. Goodlow is going to read into the record.
So this is a letter I received today from a resident at Renaissance Commons that they asked to have read into the record. I've lived at Renaissance Commons for a year. This past year has been filled with nightly and weekend verbal and physical altercations, drug use, unclean, shared use areas, noise that greatly surpasses normal. I often feel afraid, unsafe, and frustrated. Living at Renaissance has created stifling anxiety, sleepless nights, and frustration for me. I've suffered with numerous situations with only a few listed below. Slamming of doors, which has created cracks in the corner of my walls and items falling off of walls and shelves. Marijuana and cigarette smoke wafting under my door, exacerbating my allergies. 3 doors down, yelling and cursing for hours. 2 doors down, a woman kicking someone's door from 10:33 p.m. to 3:14 a.m. The garbage room is so filthy I couldn't dispose of my trash. Unwanted comments from male staff, fecal matter from dogs in the elevator and entrance, people being allowed in who had no fob to enter, no security or monitoring of the property, drinking in front of the building, and those suffering from mental health issues and unsafe situations. Insufficient parking, especially at night, which at times prevents me from safely leaving at night, knowing I likely won't have a safe parking spot when I return. Impromptu car chop shops near resident parking. And lastly, the most concerning that unfortunately has created some severe concern for my physical and mental safety is regarding a squatter 2 doors down from my apartment. I was given no notice that an unsafe situation existed. I am willing and would greatly appreciate being involved in any way possible to correct some of the above issues, whether it be a residence board or working with management and other tenants, but these issues must be addressed and resolved. Thank you. My contact information can be provided upon request.
Thank you. For those of you who stayed late and continue to be part of the meeting, we appreciate your time. As you can see, or as you are aware, this work requires of us to become uncomfortable. It doesn't always go as planned or anticipated. And if we're going to be true to our commitment, that means we respond to the discomfort. And we respond in a way, hopefully, that is integral and it's full of character and ultimately commitment for why we started. It's oftentimes when things get tough that people forget why they started. And we quit in the middle. You weren't aware. None of you were aware. But I had come to the point where I felt like we had gotten things into a space where there was a good rhythm. And it's time for me to step into another opportunity, another place. But this kind of conversation says I can't, because we have to finish what we started. We've got to address the things that have been illustrated. And I appreciate those of you who are willing to do the same. To the community members who put their trust in us after a season of vetting, whether or not we meant business, we do. And we're willing to do what's necessary to get us to a point of having good results as much as we can. Lastly, I will say, the condition of the city is a reflection of the citizens. And if we're the citizens, we have an obligation to address its condition. We can't use the condition of the city as an excuse. Not that anyone did. We certainly can't throw our hands up and walk away. I don't think we can. So my charge and my challenge to each of us is to find our space and our place and be willing to do what's necessary to make it better. That's our charge. Leave it better than we found it. So thank you for tonight. Thank you for your time. Stay safe and take care of yourself. Have a good night.